Fog Entertainment back again with another movie review, and we're going back to the 2000s, and we're going to 2009 for James Cameron's Avatar. I never got round to watching this movie at the time. Now I was about 10, well 9, 10 years older in this time, and I always knew it was a high grossing movie, like in terms of making money, which high grossing means, by the way, in case there's any people out there wondering, was it gross? But looking into the developing this movie, it is very interesting. It actually begun in '94, and it was supposed to take place after the release of Cameron's 1997 movie Titanic, and it was supposed to be released just before the year 2099. But the technology, like CGI wise, just wasn't ready for this movie. And like, could you imagine how bad the graphics would have looked for this if it came out 10, 12 years before it actually came out? Haven't seen the new one, but I'm hearing the graphics are insane, which you would expect. It's 2023 now, I mean. Like, the step forward that it would have been from 97 to 2009 would be bigger, but I'm expecting the gap from 2009 forward to 2022/23, whatever we want to call it, would be also in itself very big that way. But it took them a while to come up with this movie, and that's when you know, like, when they take this long to come up with movies, you know it's going to be a success this way. It was budgeted at 237 million, and it brought in a whopping, we'll just call it 3 billion. That's how much it made worldwide. It was like 2.988 something, but we'll call it 3 billion, right? And of course, we've got an absolute blunder by Matt Damon, who was promised by James Cameron if he was the lead actor in this, he would get 10% of its earnings. And of course, he'd rejected it because I think he said he was in the middle of filming. Was it Bourne? One of his Bourne movies, man, because that's the movies he likes. Boring as fuck. I never got the Bourne series, man. Never did, never will. But he turned that down, so he turned down essentially 300 million, which is insane. But in terms of the actual movie, it's a weird one because it drew 3 billion, right? It's not a star-studded cast, right? We all know Michelle Rodriguez and Sigourney Weaver, right? But Alien at this point was what, 30-year-old, so she hadn't been relevant in a decent while, you know. Like, of course, Aliens, like, she's in Aliens up until like the fourth one or something, so that was like 98. But, you know, it's not her most relevant, and she's not a star-studded name, you know. She's not a Stallone, she's not a Schwarzenegger, where you could appear in a movie now and you still feel relevant because that's your name. Michelle Rodriguez is like a B-level actress, she is. And then the rest of the people in this movie, I just don't really, I don't know, like, I actually just don't have a fucking clue who they are. Now, I know, wee Cully, his wife, the Avatar in this movie, is actually in fact the woman that's in Star Trek. But in terms of this movie, man, we follow a guy who was in war and his legs don't work anymore. Do you like the rhymes? I like the rhymes. But we are set in the mid 22nd century, which I thought was weird. I didn't actually notice this at the time. I thought it might have just been like present time, but we were more advanced or something like that, because that's kind of sometimes what they do with these movies. But we're not. We're set in like 2000. I think it was 2154, which is just a very weird year, isn't it? Like, it's not spectacular. But Jake Sully, he befriends Netra because essentially he's on a mission to because they create an avatar for him, and because the avatar can actually walk and his legs work, he becomes so attached to this character, which I think is understandable. I don't think there's too much out the ordinary with this personally. I think like this is a definitely thing plot, and then over the course of the movie, he basically becomes attached to like the avatars. I can't even remember what their fucking they're not called, not their breed, but they're, I don't know what the creatures are called in this, but you know, he basically does become attached to it, and I mean, he fucking ends up having sex with the avatar, even though he's the avatar. And then he gets enlisted by Colonel Quadrich to basically get information, get them to move from the sacred site so they can go in and get all the material from under it, because that will make them all very rich. But of course, the Dr. Grace, who's played by Sigourney Weaver, is like, no, we're not doing that, man. We're not doing that. But then essentially, it always happens in these sort of movies. Like, the plot is good, but, you know, it kind of is, well, it's not cookie cutter. It kind of is cookie cutter, but it's not cookie cutter because, of course, there's a very fucking unique concept where a human befriends like a completely different, you know, organism and then becomes that organism at the end of the movie. Like, of course, that's a very unique concept. But, you know, in terms of like your like the doctors are betrayed by the militaries and there's a beef, you know, it does feel very familiar, that sort of concept, like, you know, like in a zombie apocalypse one, or, you know, like just in general shit. You know, you knows what I'm on about. But the Colonel guy, this guy's a badass, played by Stephen Lang. Never heard of him before. I don't know if that's bad. I could not tell you one other movie this guy's in. But he's a badass scar. He was badass throughout the movie. Definitely MVP of the movie, in my opinion. Absolutely MVP throughout this movie. But, you know, with like a few attacks on the creatures that don't go well. But I mean, they did pretty well. A few of them ended up having guns and the bow and arrows, attempted to lay the smackdown on the humans and the military, like, but it wasn't to happen. We do get the final showdown. Neytiri, her dad dies. Basically, her entire family dies, but they manage to like get more of the creatures from afar, and they unite and they win. And then basically, Jake is saved by Neytiri at the end because he can't breathe, and it's mad because he comes out the chamber, which he can transfer to the Avatar in, and he can't breathe. And because his legs don't work, he can't reach the mask. And it's like, imagine if the main character of this movie died because he couldn't reach the fucking mask. Like, imagine that. That would have been ludicrous in my opinion, but still kind of funny at the same time. But they defeat the Colonel. He gets killed with 2 massive fucking arrows to the chest. But is he dead? I'm hearing he's in the second, third, and fourth one. So I don't know, man. Maybe they bring him back as an avatar. I don't know, man. But I also, Sigourney Weaver's character dies. They try and transform her body into an avatar, but it's unsuccessful. She dies. Only, and then Michelle Rodriguez gets blown up in her helicopter. And then at the end of the movie, basically the avatars win and they send the humans packing. But I thought, I know you can maybe argue these creatures have got a bit more compassion, but I truly thought that the avatars would have just killed them. Like, fucking genocide. And to be honest, in the real world, that's probably what would have happened. But when you've got this movie where you've kind of got to portray the avatars as the good people, which of course they are, could you imagine if the end of the movie, if they just killed all these humans that were surrendering? You know, even though it's none of it happens in war, like, I mean, they would have felt like you just wiped out our sacred tree, killed loads of our people, killed my family. We're no letting you leave. Of course, that's probably what would have happened in real life, but we're in the fictional world of Avatar, and that's, of course, is not going to happen here, guys. But you know what? I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I can definitely see why it's like the second highest grossing movie of all time, because the amount of money that went into it and the concept's very intriguing. But is it a 10 out of 10 movie? In my opinion, it's not, but it's still very good. I'd give it an 8, but would I say it's one of the most iconic movies of all time? No. Of the 21st century, it's probably up there, because I feel like the best movies are not in this century, guys. But anyway, and it's not James Cameron's best work either, but you know what? It's probably in his top 5 or something. But until next time, guys, I want you to leave your thoughts down below. That'll do it for Avatar. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. Until then, peace.